This paper was presented at the 23rd Congress of the International Association of Historians of Religion held in Krakow. Ecumenical initiatives of the Ukrainian churches in the challenges of social crisis and war, contemporary context. The year 2025 is marked by two global events related to the ecumenical movement. 1,700 years have passed since the Council of Nicaea, which became a decisive moment in the formation of the Orthodox Christian doctrine. 100 years have passed since the Stockholm Conference, which tried to stop the Second World War with ecumenical initiatives. The organizer of this conference, the Swedish priest Nathan Söderblom, began his speech in honor of the Nobel Peace Prize with words, "I believe that leaving ourselves alone with our arrogance and evil passions doesn't lead to true peace. Peace can be achieved only through the struggle with the ancient Adam in ourselves and in others. Today, Ukraine finds itself in a situation where it not only protects the world from the absolute evil, but also defends the highest values that give religion the right to be called religion, that is, by the God." In the conditions of war, one can speak of the phenomenon of the Ukrainian ecumenism as a real course in interfaith relations. It is a way of coexistence and condition that overcome moral deformation between conflicting and indifferent churches and religion organizations. The development of Ukrainian ecumenism is complex, ambiguous, and closely linked to the historical, political, and confessional context of Ukraine. However, under all historical conditions, one of the important features of Ukrainian ecumenism is the context of multi-confessionalism, its existence in a unique religious landscape. The confessional mosaic contributes to the need for dialogue, but also complicates it. As a result, Ukrainian ecumenism exists and develops in a specific form, rather as cooperation, solidarity than theological association. This is not a classical Western-style ecumenism, but a developed model of dialogue in the condition of a complex religious and national situation. Ukrainian religious scholars have long used the concept of religious dialogue, which is world theme best corresponded to the trends of the interfaith peace and harmony. However, modernity has acutely raised the question of the existence of the boundaries of the religious dialogue, which have proven to be critically insufficient, not functional for understanding between churches in the face of the challenges of the social crisis and military actions by the Russian aggressor state. In a critical situation of instability for the state, the question arises: can the churches self-organize in order to put into practice the contributive ideas of the ecumenical movement? What factors motivate Ukrainian churches to implement the ideas of the ecumenical movement in conditions of war and social crisis? What types and forms of the ecumenical movement are observed in Ukrainian churches? It seems important to study the practical aspect of the implementation of ecumenical ideas by churches in Ukraine. The war became a catalyst for ecumenical processes, increasing the need for unity among Christians. At the same time, Ukrainian ecumenists during the Russia's military aggression against Ukraine underwent a significant transformation from formal interfaith dialogue to real solidarity, cooperation, and joint Christian witness. We can speak of a new level of practical ecumenism, which, due to the existential challenges of the war, has its own characteristic features. First of all, we're talking about the joint moral condemnation of Russia's military aggression by Ukrainian churches and religion organizations, the vast majority of which are represented by the activities of the following interreligious platforms. 1. The All-Ukrainian Council of Churches and Religious Organizations, which has existed since 1996 and has already gained consultative popularity in relations with state authorities. This is the most important platform for ecumenical dialogue in Ukraine, uniting Orthodox, Catholics, Protestants, Jews, Muslims. The All-Ukrainian Council of Religious Association, and all. The above-mentioned All-Ukrainian Councils are not theological ecumenical platforms, but they perform an important coordination and moral function. Their statements often have a wide resonance, in particular regarding war, gender issues, family values, etc. Even before the full-scale invasion of the Russian Federation to Ukraine, issues of interfaith harmony were raised on these platforms. Strategies, in particular, participation of churches and religious organizations in peace building, the need to combat domestic violence and preserve family values. The attitude of religious organizations to current issues of health care and citizens' lives was highlighted. Meetings with parliamentarians were initiatives to restore dialogue and establish constant interaction between government structures and religious communities. The importance of religious freedom, family values, and public morality was emphasized. The creation of inclusive platforms for interreligious and interfaith communication was initiative. On the eve of Russia's full-scale military attack on Ukraine on February 24, 2022, the All-Ukrainian Council of Churches and Religious Organizations addressed the President of Russian Federation, condemning the aggressive war as a great crime against the Almighty. Subsequently, in its annual appeals regarding Russian military invasion of Ukraine, the All-Ukrainian Council of Churches and Religion Organizations directly calls the unprovoked Russian aggression an evil that must be punished by higher justice. In their daily work, representatives of different religions and confessions still express unanimous support for statehood, the army, and the displaced persons. This demonstrates a rare case of a coordinated ethical and political position of the part of religion organizations with different belief systems. It is also an eloquent example of broader ecumenism, which reflects the idea not a general unification, but of interconnected relation between confessions. Such an ecumenical movement creates a broader framework for cooperation, joint service of representatives of different faiths in the real condition of war and social crisis. During the military actions of the Russian Federation against Ukraine, Humanitarian cooperation between confessions has gained significant importance. Christian churches, in particular, the Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church, the Orthodox Church of Ukraine, the Roman Catholic Church, Protestants, actively cooperate in the placement of displaced persons, the organization of humanitarian and psychological assistance, assistance to the wounded, military personnel, refugees. Volunteers don't divide people by confessional or religious affiliation. They act together. The ecumenical movement in the armed forces of Ukraine and the front is acquiring distinct features as military chaplains of different denominations serve together. This is about practical ecumenism at the front. In hospital, when priests provide spiritual assistance, support with prayer, perform baptism, and confess soldiers regardless of their denomination affiliation. This form a new trench ecumenism. There is not theoretical differences that are important, but joint service. The activities of the All-Ukrainian Interconfessional Religious Christian Military Brotherhood, which raises the issue of development of chaplaincy movement in Ukraine, implemented chaplain training programs and providing psychological support to those in need have been updated. Throughout the entire period of the Russian-Ukrainian war, which has begun since 2014, the prayerful unity of Ukrainian churches has been observed. They hold joint prayers for Ukraine in many Ukrainian cities and abroad, in which Orthodox, Greek Catholic, Roman Catholics, and Protestants pray together. Joint prayers are also held in central squares of the country's cities and hospitals, and in the format of an online broadcast. As a result of Russia's war against Ukraine, the concept of unity was redefined, and the phases in ecumenical shifted. If early ecumenism mainly meant dialogue around dogmatic differences, now it is unity in service, in joint testimony, in the defense of life, which is fully consistent with the concept of ecumenism of blood or ecumenism of solidarity. In such cases, unity is manifested not so much in great theological formulation, but in fidelity to Christ, in the common experience of tragedy, which is evidences even at the cost of life, presupposes the action of Christians of different confessions in serving the needy in the fight against injustice war. And it's about a desire to be together and serve people, even despite religious differences. Practice shows that true unity of representatives of different religions and confessions is born not only on theological dialogues, but also in the living testimony of faith, hope, and love in condition of suffering and struggle for trust. In the context of Russian military attack of Ukraine, society has changed its attitude towards the Ukrainian Orthodox Church Moscow Patriarchate, which is currently in a state of crisis. The Church's position on the war is perceived as ambiguous or doubly loyal, depending on the aggressive policy of the Russian Orthodox Church. As a result, some dioceses, both in Ukraine and abroad, have declared a break with the Moscow Patriarchate. Other denominations are reconsidering the possibility of dialogue with the Ukrainian Orthodox Church, Moscow Patriarchate. This church deliberately doesn't participate in ecumenical dialogue, conceals its dependence on the Russian Orthodox Church. But according to its official documents, the Moscow Patriarchate continues to be a branch of the Russian Orthodox Church in Ukraine. Despite dozens of its churches destroyed, among the religious buildings damaged by the Russian attack, the largest number belong to the Ukrainian Orthodox Church of the Moscow Patriarchate, 338, among which 31 objects were completely destroyed. And the cooperation of priests with Russian Orthodox Church in the Ukrainian territories occupied by Russia, the Ukrainian Orthodox Church Moscow Patriarchate has never given a proper assessment of these crimes. Ukrainian churches position themselves as a serious moral alternative to the Ruski Mir, exposing the false theology of Ruski Mir as a heresy that justifies violence and militarism, and arguing that the basis of Russian aggressions and crimes against Ukraine lies in the chauvinistic and misanthropic ideology of the Ruski Mir spread by Kremlin and other Russian denominations. Instead, religious organizations in Ukraine offer a vision of the church as a space of trust, freedom, responsibility, and service, not empire. In this context, new initiatives and documents of Ukrainian churches deserve attention. For example, the Ecumenical Social Week held by Ukrainian Catholic University in Lviv 2023 was dedicated to the theme Unity in Times of Trials. At the same time, joint declarations of Ukrainian churches are being published and interreligious forums are being organized on issues of Ukrainian post-war reconstruction, rehabilitation, and social justice. The war became a catalyst for deeper ecumenism in Ukraine, less declarative, more concrete. Under this condition, the corresponding features of Ukrainian ecumenical emerged. Churches and religious organizations demonstrated real cooperation in the social sphere. Churches became a moral tuning fork for society. Joint moral leadership is conditioned by position of Ukrainian churches against the military action of the Russian aggression state in those Russian churches and religious organizations that support the war, calling is holy. The moral leadership of Ukrainian churches in times of war is a voice of trust against aggression, service to one's neighbor without a division into one's own and other, joint prayer and solidarity, interfaith and interreligious public witness to the world, spiritual support for defenders and victims, and opposition to the spiritual colonialism of the Russian Federation. Ukrainian churches anonymously speak of dignity, forgiveness, but not of capitulation, supporting the people's resistance to the invader, to capitulate to the triumphant evil and tantamount to the collapse of the universal plan of justice, to the betrayal of the fundamental guidelines bequeathed to us in the great spiritual tradition. In their joint statements, religious organizations consistently convey The idea that war is a challenge to face, a test of true Christianity. But at the same time, they call for prayer not for the death of enemies, but for the victory of trust and liberation from evil. Thus, new forms of unity of Ukrainian churches and religious organizations are being formed on the basis of sacrifice and service to the Ukrainian people, based on common ethical principles of religious beliefs. Also, the war did not resolve doctrinal contradictions. It showed that unity is possible through love for one's neighbor, service, prayer, and the protection of the civil dignity of the human person. Such ecumenical activity is carried out on the basis of shared Christian values, when justice requires calling things by their right names, polarizing good and evil in order to defeat evil and establish lasting peace. Thank you for your attention.